All right, well, I will let you know that I asked permission to share this story here. So Scott, who was up a moment ago, is my son. He was praying because for Catherine Scott, he's going to be part of our team who goes to the Dominican. But just slightly over a week ago, I was bringing him to the airport. He was going on a direct flight to New York to see his dad. We had to leave home at 2:30 in the morning. I am not a morning person. That is not anybody's morning wake up time as far as I'm concerned. That's crazy. And it was after only just a couple of hours of sleep because we were rushing and doing laundry and packing, whatnot. Anyway, once he was ready to go through security, as we had arrived, plenty of time, it was all good. When you're doing a direct flight to the States, I can't go with him. And all I could do was just kind of stand there and wave and watch him walk away. It was kind of an odd feeling. I had to really trust that, he was awake enough to look at the boarding pass, sit at the waiting area for the proper gate, find that spot, hunker down for the next 2 hours, wait to get on this plane. I thought, all right, it'll be okay. It's all good. So I drove home, and we're about 45 minutes from the airport. And that is weird, right? He's over there. He hasn't left anywhere yet. I'm going back home. Anyway, not long after I had gotten home, Scott texted me to say that they did, in fact, board the plane, but then they had to deboard the plane because of mechanical issues. And then at that point, he wasn't sure when or even if they'd be flying out. All he could do is just wait and see. So we had minimal communication. The airport departure website was not giving any info about that particular flight. I was at home, he was at the airport, and there was 8 hours where I felt like a real loss of control over this situation. I, at some point, didn't know, had he gotten on a plane? Had he missed a plane? Did he fall asleep? Was he just sleeping in the airport departure area? I don't know. I had no clue. So finally, at 2:30 in the afternoon, an employee of the airline actually texted me to let me know that he actually was safely on an airplane towards New York. And I was like, whew, excellent. Well, those 8 hours, that was a stressful moment of time. And it just reminded me there definitely are periods in life when you realize how little control you really do. That's a small example in the grand scheme of things. But it definitely was a reminder to me, I am not always in control as much as I may want to be or think I am. And it certainly reminded me of how hard it is when we feel out of control. And now today's passage definitely has a lot to say about that. And for some of you, it may be a very familiar passage, much like when I read from Exodus 3 earlier. You're like, oh, burning bush, I got that, I know. This as well may be a very familiar passage, but that is the fascinating thing about God's word is that it's alive, right? Jesus, it said that he is the word, and so it is something that we can learn from, even from those very familiar passages that we may have heard from Sunday school since we were 4 years old. We just need to be open though, right? Open to hearing what God has to share in this moment and not kind of go oh yeah, heard that one before. I'm good, I got it covered. So we're actually gonna pray once again that God would, in fact, open our hearts to hear something new from a familiar passage. So let's do that. God, I pray that very thing, God, that you would open our hearts and just give us ears to hear what it is that you would have us hear this morning from your word. God, that your word truly is something alive and that we would see it as that. And God, just make my mumbly words kind of pass away and help us to hear what it is that you would have us take away from this today. God, may your spirit touch our hearts. Amen. All right. I have a task for you. You really need to put your creative minds to work today. I want you to use your imagination muscles. Maybe it's not something you've done in a while, I don't know. But we are going to attempt to vividly picture this event in history that is recorded in the Bible. And We're going to do that together as I describe the scenario. But first, I'm going to set us up with a little background so that you know what moment we are talking about here. We're going to be picturing a particular moment, again, with Moses. So now earlier, as I said, I had read from Exodus 3. That's where Moses first encountered God in the burning bush. That same Moses who took his sandals off because he was on holy ground is the one that God called to deliver the Israelites out of Egypt. Moses was going to confront Pharaoh and bring his people to freedom. So the story that I'm going to talk about today is the Exodus, like exiting Egypt, the great Exodus story found in the Old Testament, the second book of the Bible. And it's about God rescuing his people, the Israelites, from slavery in Egypt. And for hundreds of years, the Israelites had been trapped under Pharaoh's rule into forced labor. So hundreds of years, day after day, they were out in the hot sun, like picture, I mean, it's been hot here recently, but think of like Egypt in the hot sun, and you're out there day after day. Your hands, you're supposed to be shaping bricks, like your hands are blistered and raw. What else? Your back is hurting with the weight of the heavy loads. You're just carrying stuff all day long. You're hearing that whip crack from Pharaoh's overseers pushing people harder and harder to do their work. Their lives are not at all their own. It's according to the time that they're being told to work and rest and eat and so on. And God spoke to Moses and raised him up as a leader to confront Pharaoh and to demand freedom for the Israelite people. Pharaoh's heart was stubborn and he wouldn't allow their freedom. So God sent these 10 plagues, another familiar Sunday school story for you perhaps, these powerful plagues, these signs that really proved God is the one and only powerful God. Finally, that made Pharaoh agree to let the Israelites leave Egypt, go, live your own lives somewhere else, just take your people, you're free. Pharaoh said, yep, you can leave now. So according to God's plan, which he revealed to Moses, the Israelites would leave their place of slavery and walk to this new land that God had told them to live in, the land of Canaan. So the people, they were in Egypt, but they were rushing to get away quickly from their oppressors. They wanted to gather all of their things, do what God had instructed them. There were hundreds of thousands of men, plus the women, plus the children. It's estimated about 2 million people in all. That's like all 3 maritime provinces, gathering all of their family members, their belongings and whatnot, and making this big march towards their freedom. They were walking, again, with their animals, their things, carrying their children, hanging on to all that they owned, heading into the wilderness in faith, believing God had a plan to bring them to safety, and believing Moses heard that plan correctly, hopefully. I sure hope he heard correctly. We're supposed to do this, right? Like, take all my stuff and walk a long distance and... That alone, I mean, I'd watch that movie. That's a heroic tale right there. I might even enjoy that movie. 2 million people endure hundreds of years of slavery, and now, after many challenges, they're free, and they march to freedom. Sounds great. Again, we're pretending we are hearing this story for the first time, but some of you know that's not the end of the story. So as I was saying, they were walking with their families, their animals, everything that they owned, heading into the wilderness in faith, believing God had a plan to bring them to safety. But before long, Pharaoh changed his mind. So in Exodus 14, 5-7, we read, when the king of Egypt was told that the people had fled, Pharaoh and his officials changed their minds about them and said, what have we done? We have let the Israelites go and have lost their service. So he had his chariot made ready and took his army with him. He took 600 of the best chariots along with all the other chariots of Egypt and with officers over all of them. The most powerful military force in the world at that time was racing towards an unarmed crowd of former slaves. Pharaoh decided he wanted them back. They were forced labor. It was very useful for Pharaoh to have them in his land. Pharaoh wanted his military to go and capture them and bring them back to Egypt. So the Israelites soon found themselves trapped, like physically trapped. Pharaoh's army was closing in behind them. They had been walking this way. Pharaoh's army's coming towards them this way. And then over here is the Red Sea. There's nowhere for them to go. They are completely boxed in. So in this moment is where we're going to really use our imagination. That was all the background information. Now, put on your imagination caps here and pretend that we are an Israelite in this moment. Moses is our leader. Pretend you don't know the rest of the story. And let's just see what it's like to live in this moment. You and I, we have been slaves for generations, working hard day after day. My hands hurt. I can't remember a time when my back didn't hurt. Remember, it was just felt like a few days ago when this guy Moses told us that God had a plan for all of us to be freed from our slavery. It sounds a little far-fetched, but I guess it could be true. So then, remember when Moses actually proved, like with those plagues, how powerful God really is? That crazy set of miracles that happened? Wow, like, I guess Moses could be the real deal. Maybe he really is hearing from God. So then there was that big thing that happened, and Pharaoh actually agreed to let us go. So, we're obviously going to flee as fast as we can, grab what you can, and get running. So we follow Moses' directions that he tells us are from God. We walk the long way around in the wilderness. I'm not sure why, but a week after walking of very little food and no comforts, after all of that, I'm so hungry. I'm so tired. I'm carrying all this stuff. I'm trying to keep track of my family among 2 million people. And now we get to the sea, the edge of the sea. So at some point, I guess we have to cross it. Like Moses told us that the promised land is on the other side of the sea, but we don't have any boats. And I'm pretty sure in the distance, I see Pharaoh's army coming after us with all of their horses and chariots and military. And now there's actually nowhere to go. There's no bridge. There's no boats. There's no way to escape. I'm pretty sure this is a trap. Like, I think Moses literally led us into a trap. I think we're going to die. There's just nowhere to go. It's either we die or we have to surrender to the Egyptians. And in this case, we might as well have just stayed in Egypt, right? Like, freedom does not seem possible in this moment. So I hope you traveled back with me for just a second there and felt the tension of that. Just a few verses in the Bible, but that was like a big moment in the lives of the Israelites who were standing there in that place. Their minds must have been whirling a million miles a second. And of course they would. They're trapped. Their heads are just trying to figure out this situation that they're in. What are their options? How can they save themselves and their family right now? Is there a scenario where they actually remain alive? Yes, maybe, but then they're still slaves. So what do? Like, how can they take control of what is happening in this moment? And you can hear that panic when you read Exodus 14, 10 to 12. As Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians marching after them. They were terrified and cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, "Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? What have you done to us, bringing us out of Egypt? Did we not say to you in Egypt, 'Leave us alone. Let us serve the Egyptians'? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert." Physically, in this moment, how do you think you'd be feeling if you were one of the Israelites? Because I imagine physically I'd be hot, sunburnt, dusty, sore, exhausted, hungry, grumpy, angry, hopeless, mentally and emotionally, panicked, terrified, doubting, afraid. God's people are physically drained, emotionally raw, spiritually doubtful, and this situation feels totally out of control. Now, maybe not to that extreme, but to some degree, we all know what it feels like to be boxed in. To some degree, we have had situations in our lives that feel out of control, as though things are just in total chaos. Sometimes it's a big crisis. Absolutely, those happen. Other times, it's literally just the small pressures of daily life that just keep piling. And in those moments of decision, we might feel stuck about our way forward, because honestly, there appears to be no good way forward. Egyptians coming after you on this side, Red Sea on that side. Literally, where do you go? Our first instinct might be to try to take control and figure out our next move. Grasp at all the possibilities. What if I do this? What if I do that? If we could just figure out what to do about this situation, maybe things will be okay. And that makes sense. I'm in a bind. I'm at a crossroads. I have a big decision to make. What are my options? What do I do? Let's make the pros and cons list. How do I get out of this? What will be my next step? We need to take control of the situation to feel okay. And there are many events in our everyday lives where we can feel that way. Maybe one or some of these sound familiar from your past or your present. I'm feeling restless. I'm feeling unsatisfied with life. What is my purpose? I lost my job. What should I do? Prices are going up and my job just isn't paying the bills anymore. My marriage feels rocky. My relationships are tense. A family member received a diagnosis and I don't know what's going to happen. I'm waiting on test results and I'm scared. My kid made a bad choice and I can't fix it for them. I'm feeling pressure at work, pressure at school. I'm lonely. I think I have to move from where I'm living. I just retired and I don't know what to do with my time. My kids all left home and I now feel lonely and I don't know what to do with my time. Day-to-day life is literally just wearing me down. I feel like my life is out of control. Things are so chaotic right now. So maybe today, or maybe you can just recall a time where you can relate with one or more of those things. And as humans, we crave a bit of control because it feels wrong to be out of control. It feels good to be in control. It feels dangerous even to be out of control. We assume that if we're out of control, we must be failing or not operating the way we should. Being out of control would cause us to feel like the Israelites did. Physically drained, there's a physical element to feeling out of control. Emotionally raw and spiritually doubtful. And we don't like feeling that way. And the Israelites didn't like feeling that way either. Now, maybe it's just me. I don't think I'm alone, though. If I had to guess, some of you will relate. When one part of your life feels out of control, there's this sudden urge to tighten the grip on everything else around you. It's like, if I can't control this one thing, I better grab all the things in my life. Do you know what I mean? Now, I think there's two kinds of people. The best analogies sum everybody up as one of two kinds of people. So I think there are two kinds of people in the world. When you come home with a trunk full of groceries, do you take a few bags, like one in each arm at a time, bring them into the house, come back to the car, go to the trunk, take one bag in each arm again, make another trip, and you do several loads? Or do you load up all the groceries into your arms at once. I'm a load them all up like this guy, right? I see this picture and I think of myself because that's how I bring in my groceries. And Justin's like, oh, you should ask for help. And I'm like, no, I got it. It's all good. I can do it. But honestly, it does make me think of life. When one part feels shaky, I tend to gather everything else up and try to carry it all at once without dropping a single bag, because if life can just be controlled a little bit, I feel better. Now, if we go back to the Israelites for a moment, remember, they are in panic. They are in chaos. They are feeling out of control. They aren't holding grocery bags. They're literally clutching their children, their animals, everything they own. They're gripping on to what little sense of control they have while feeling boxed in between this unstoppable army at one side and the sea on the other side. And there's nowhere to go and there's nowhere to run. They turn to Moses in fury. They're convinced that he has led them into disaster. Their minds are racing, and their voices are full of fear, and they want to just point their finger at Moses and accuse him of doing something wrong. And it's in that moment, at the height of their doubt and in the height of chaos, that there's a glimmer of hope. Moses says to them, be still. Be still. Listen to his words, verses 13 and 14. Moses answers the people, do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. So the Hebrew word translated as be still in this instance literally means to be silent, to be quiet, to be speechless. It can also mean to refrain from action. Moses isn't telling the people, relax, just take a load off, it'll be fine. He's calling them to stop panicking, stop complaining, stop scrambling for their own solution, and instead stand still, quiet their fears, and let God act on their behalf. It's both quietness, no more grumbling, no more fear, and a bit of restraint. Don't try to fix it on your own. Now again, imagine you don't know the end of the story, because it's more fun if you don't. You're an Israelite. You're clutching at all you have in the world. Freedom seems like a totally lost concept at this point. Death is what feels like the certain thing right now. And then this man, Moses, looks at you and says, God's got this. You just need to be quiet and wait. Maybe for the first time, there's a glimmer of hope. When I first read it, I thought, oh no, I think they'd actually be like, are you sure? Come on, Moses. But then I realized that they can remember all of the times that God did fight for them through the generations. So they're not going to be snarky like I thought maybe I might be looking at Moses when he told me to be quiet. I think that Moses is able to remind them of what they already knew, but maybe they just forgot. The Lord will fight for you. Just then, is it possible that they could have remembered the stories passed down from generation to generation? How God made a covenant with Abraham, how he blessed Jacob. These are their ancestors, and they've been telling one another, family to family to family, of how God saved their whole people through Joseph. And he was faithful then. So couldn't he be trusted now? Exodus 14:15-16 says, Then the Lord said to Moses, Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on. Raise your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea to divide the water so that the Israelites can go through the sea on dry ground. The Lord fought for them. They only needed to be still. They knew God saved his people in the past, and he would be faithful to save them again. And in their panic and in their chaos, hope broke through when they decided to listen to Moses' words and be still. Trust God with that really hard stuff. It's the only way that the Israelites could have been saved that day. So what do we do with this story of the Red Sea? When we face chaos in our lives, we're not literally standing at the shoreline with the Egyptian chariots bearing down on us, but it can honestly feel very overwhelming in some of our day-to-day issues. Our chaos shows up differently because we worry how we're going to look after our kids because, parenting is very hard and sometimes they just really stress you out, or trying to pay bills these days, or health concerns that literally keep you up at night thinking about them in your mind. Relationships are heavy on your heart. There's deadlines, there's traffic, there's news that makes you feel like you're anxious for what the future will be in this world. It piles up like an armful of overstuffed grocery bags, and we just keep thinking that we have to juggle it all. We have to pick up the whole load at once to give us some sense of control. But it's heavy, isn't it? So the Israelites that day at the Red Sea had a choice. They could live in that panic and that chaos and that sense of maybe having control, or they could be still and they could trust God. They could let fear dictate their story or let God fight for them and continue their story. And the same really is true for us. We can cling to control knowing it momentarily feels better, or will we dare to believe that God is able? Do we believe that he split the sea that day? Can God do amazing, miraculous things? If we believe that, I think it's okay to trust that he will for us too. He is able. Now, how do we do that? There's always that, how do I actually make this happen in my real life? And I want to look at two instances in the Bible where we read those two words, be still. As we read in Exodus 14:14, here it says, the Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. And in that instance, the words be still, the Hebrew translates to meaning be quiet. Be quiet. In Psalm 46:10, maybe a very familiar verse to some, it's written, be still and know that I am God. And in this instance, be still in the Hebrew means let go, which the Hebrew words meaning let go, that really struck me. I need to let go in order to see that God is so good and is so powerful. So when I read that verse to myself, I read it as, Hannah, let go so that I can know you are God. To me, they're tied together. If I'm still hanging on, am I really acknowledging that God is the all-powerful God who can split a sea? Sometimes the best thing we can do is stop talking, stop overanalyzing, stop over-explaining, stop arguing. Simply sit quietly in the presence of God. And other times we need to literally open a clenched fist and let go of the things that we've been hanging on to. We need to release these things that we maybe weren't even meant to carry in the first place. So we need to be quiet and we need to let go. We need to be still. When we do both, we're making room for God to act. Where is he going to help us out if we're hanging on to all this stuff? Right? We're not giving him the opportunity. Now, it does not come naturally to me, to anyone I don't think. I've never met anybody who says, I have figured out how to do this perfectly in my day-to-day life. It is a regular daily practice. It's like anything that you need to practice. You repeat it, you do it over again. We never become quite perfect at it. But we have to start somewhere. We have to begin. And for some of us, it could look like just pausing in the middle of a stressful day. Now, for me, when I pause in the middle of a stressful day because I feel overwhelmed, I go and make a coffee. Anybody else? And that's not bad. I think to myself, I'm going to make this coffee so that I can power through the afternoon. But what if I paused to pray so that I can make it through the afternoon, and releasing that to God? Maybe it means putting down your phone at night because you're doing that doomsday scrolling, and it's where you begin to feel anxious that the world is falling apart and there's no good future for anybody in the world, and it's overwhelming. But what if you put the phone down and open up the Bible when our minds are racing? And it might mean starting the morning in silence, or ending the day by naming your burdens so that you release them to God before sleep. And over time, we learn to trust more quickly. We learn to fear less deeply. And again, it's something we have to do regularly. I'll remind you, if you know what happens with the Israelites, yeah, they put their trust in God that day and he delivered them from the Egyptians. But they went right back to clutching onto the control very soon after, and they had to learn it again. And then they were delivered by God because they put their trust in him. And then they held on to everything and wanted control once more. And then they had to release it. It's a cycle, and we need to be doing this on a regular basis. Now, when we look back, I bet we can each see a trail of God's faithfulness, and that gives us hope for when we're looking forward, when that future is still uncertain. We can trust him with our past and with our future. We can rest in his goodness today and believe that even in the chaos, he is fighting for us. Now, here's, as I said, what I think is the best part, and it's that God helps us even when we're not doing this perfectly right, even when we're still grabbing all of the bags. It doesn't depend on how well we be still. God's goodness for us doesn't depend on how well we be quiet and how well we let go. Even when we fail at this, and even when we are in panic mode and think we have to hold all of the things, God is still faithful. He doesn't wait until we have figured our trust thing out perfectly, because he is a good God and he loves us. God loves you. God is so good. God can be trusted. Be still and know that God has got this, right? Now, I want to invite Andrea and Kyla back up. They're going to lead us in a closing song called Trust in God. And here's just a few of the words. It says, I trust in God, my Savior, the one who will never fail. He will never fail. He didn't fail you then. He won't fail you now. Right? So good when we just believe that to be true. And I do pray that we can rest in that assurance today.